Welcome to the Develop Yourself podcast, where we teach you everything you need to land your first job as a software developer by learning to develop yourself, your skills, your network, and more. I'm Brian, your host. Before we get into today's show, I have to let you know that this is the last week where you can take $500 off the enrollment to Parsity if you put down a deposit now, work with us to pass the admissions challenge, get accepted, work with us, and also take advantage of our job guarantee. You can read more about it at parsity.io. Without further ado, here's the show. Today on the Develop Yourself podcast, I want to dive into the software developer job market, do's, don'ts, what's changed, what stayed the same, and tactical stuff that early career developers can do. We have a very special guest, David Roberts, software engineer, recruiter, owner of Crushing Digital, and soon-to-be partner at Parsity. I'm really happy to have you on the show.
Thank you, Brian. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Me too, because if you follow David on LinkedIn or TikTok, you have some fairly spicy posts. Great information, always super tactical, practical stuff, but it's no nonsense, and I think it strikes a nerve with people sometimes. But that's one of the things that drew me to you, because you have the kind of advice that I feel like is missing online a lot, like outside of the fluffy, feel-good stuff. You're like, here's what you probably should be doing, and here's what I've seen not work a bunch.
Yeah, I've definitely... I mean, at first, you always start out doing the fluffy stuff, right? The low-hanging fruit.
Right.
But I think as I started to settle into doing social media posts, no one actually starts out being comfortable with social media posts, right? So once I became comfortable and then started doing more videos and things like that, I think a little bit more of me came out. And I definitely like to focus on let's get some actual tangible results, and if not, what's the point of me being here, right?
I feel you.
So sometimes I tell people what they need to hear versus, as opposed to what they want to hear, and I know that kind of will resonate with some and will put some people off, and
For sure.
And I guess I have to take that, and that's my niche, that's my thing.
I think it shows that you care, because it's easy to give like these platitudes and write this really feel good stuff, like just keep going and you're gonna make it. And I'm guilty of that too sometimes. I've written stuff, but I also really do feel like that. But I also know that sometimes the advice you really need is not always the advice you really want to hear. So I'm glad there's some voices out there saying, here's what I see work. And you have a interesting history too, which I want to get into, which lends a lot of credibility to what you say too. And you have like decades in software engineering at a leadership level, and also as a recruiter, which is really interesting. How did that happen?
Yeah. I always like to say I was tricked into being a recruiter. Like, no one chooses this. Certainly not the path I chose anyway. I've been a developer. I graduated from university in 2000. I didn't even want to be a software developer, but my dad was in computers, and my brothers were in computers, and I got to the end of school and my dad said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know. I don't want to do anything. And he said, you're going to go and be a programmer because you'll always have a job. And I didn't like him very much at the time for that, but he was right. And it served me well. It took me a long time to actually find the love for coding. It didn't happen immediately, and I see so many developers coming through a coding bootcamp and they go, it's not clicking with me yet. And I'm like, dude, you're 10 weeks in. This took me 5 years before this
right?
finally started to resonate. And you find the tech you like, you find the industries you like, you find whether you find the thing you love or you just make peace with it, I don't know.
Right.
I was always being pushed into more leadership roles. I guess it's because I like talking, probably. So I led lots of software development teams. And then I was always very good at getting the job, probably not the best at doing the job. But, I spent a lot of time doing that side of things. And I started to then help developers that I knew who were great at doing the job, not so great at getting the job. And I helped a few friends and acquaintances, and they went to get great jobs and they were happy. So then one of them suggested I do this, and I started doing this idea of a business to help people to stand out. And very quickly then, because I thought, I've been on lots of interviews myself. I've interviewed developers for my team, all that sort of stuff. And then I got asked very quickly upon starting this business to go and work for somebody. And then I ended up building and leading a recruitment team. And that led me on to a few more places where I managed teams of recruiters. And we hired hundreds, interviewed thousands of developers across the world. And that's when I really realized, because I thought I know how this game works, and I realized I have no idea how this works. It's a really different game to what I thought it was, even though I was doing quite well at it at the time. But you have to bear in mind, I'm pretty old. So this was at the stage where if you knew what a keyboard was, you got a job, right? Those days are behind us, sadly. So I then didn't really like recruitment either, because when you work as a recruiter, you tend to work for the companies rather than for the developer. And I'm a developer at heart because I am one. So after trying various attempts at that, and rather successfully, I guess, it always went well, but it wasn't a passion. So I wanted to come back and do something for developers. So a lot of people say, why don't you do the recruitment side of things now? And I'm like, it's not where I want to be. So today I teach, and I started this then teaching very senior developers how to stand out. The problem with trying to teach senior developers or tell senior developers that their profiles suck is a hard sell.
That feedback, right? Yeah. Right.
So the people who did begin to listen were those junior, trying to break into the industry, coding boot camps, and that's where I've kind of carved out a business. So I think everything happens for a reason, and then I got dragged into this recruitment thing to show me, you know nothing about this. And I think that's my niche, is having both sides of that coin.
It's really cool because you gave a talk at Parsity to students. We recorded it, and I was listening to it. And here I thought I knew also a lot about getting hired. I'm like, well, hey, I've been hired a lot. I've helped people get hired. And I realized that, I know a lot less than I thought I did. Being on the recruitment side, you said you also realized that you didn't really know anything. What did you learn going from developer to the recruiter side?
So the phrase I commonly use is recruitment is a speed game. And there's a difference between internal recruitment and external recruitment. But for the generality of this, usually a client is asking for a developer or a team of developers, and you're not the only people looking. So it's how quickly can you operate. And so you're leveraging referrals, you're leveraging your networks, and then worst case scenario, you're putting out a job. And by the time, time differences work, by the time people sober up, by the time people see this post and apply, and then all that, trying to schedule interviews and things, chances are the job is going to be gone, or somebody else is going to flood the client's calendar. So usually you've got a very small window, usually about 3 to 5 days, to get your developers in front of that client so that you can make sure you get paid. So you've got to move as quickly as possible, and it leads to situations where pretty much every developer said, I've been speaking to the developer and I'm not sure that role exists. Now, I never interviewed, so I did interview without a role, but I would be interviewing knowing maybe if it was Node.js, I might have 2 or 3 developers doing that a week. So by the time you see the advert and you apply, that it's not that job, it's the next job. So I'm constantly trying to keep a warm list of who's available, who's ready, so that when the next job comes in tomorrow, the next day, I throw you at it really quickly. So people would be applying and be asking me details. And I'm like, you can be hazy because I don't know where I'm going to throw you, but I like you. I need to get to know you. I need to build that rapport so I can move very quickly with you. So the next thing is when you're searching through, I'd get somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 applicants to any job I'd put out there. And when I'm searching through that many profiles, it all starts to blend. And you definitely focus on LinkedIn rather than the resume because LinkedIn's always in the same format for me. But I'm looking through your profile thinking, well, I've got 1,000 to go through. So I'm going to look for 5 or 10 seconds and make a snap decision. And are you making it easy? Are you communicating what your skill set is? How proactive you are? What's your value set? And funneling me to the evidence to show me that? Or are you making me work? And I always say, I don't like to work. I've got lots of other people to go through.
For sure.
So the best developers rarely get the job. It's the ones that sell themselves the best that do. Now, does this mean I miss out on great developers? Yeah, all the time.
For sure.
And you'll hear those phrases, people saying, oh, the recruiter should learn more about tech. Recruiters are not paid to do so. They're not incentivized to do so. And they're operating on a speed basis. Like if they don't find somebody quickly, they're fired. So you're trying to go as quickly as possible, in which case you would hedge your bets as well. You would go with that developer. Because if I put you forward and you don't get the job, my boss or someone like that's going to say, why did you put this person forward? And I go, I don't know. I took a chance. We can't take chance. They fought long and hard to win that client. So I have to put forward somebody who go, look, you asked for all these skills and they've evidenced and here they are. Right. So if you make it easy for me, it becomes easy to sell you on to somebody else.
Yeah, I do have a problem with the amount of hate recruiters get online. Like, I'm a JavaScript developer, but they said Java, ha, 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 ha. I'm like, but these people are also the key to the job. Like, every job I've had, including the very last one, which I got just last week, was through a recruiter. I worked with them. They made the process to me much easier. They don't know anything about tech. I don't expect them to. But yeah, what is with the hate with
it comes from both sides. Not the hate from both sides, but there is this thing on both sides. So developers don't make it easy for recruiters. If you spend any time looking at developer profiles, you'll realize very quickly that most of them are terrible, sadly. And this is where kind of one of my biggest posts on TikTok was me saying 95% of coding bootcamp graduates are going to fail. I think was the annoying bit I said that really triggered people.
Yeah.
And in the post, I'm explaining when I see their profiles straight off the bat, it's not fit for purpose. I'm not saying that they're bad developers, often great developers. But then the thing I say to these developers is when I ask them, how are you applying for jobs? It's either big job boards or it's recruiters. Most developers use recruiters. So if that's the case, this recruiter that you hate so much is actually your customer.
Yeah.
And the customer is always right.
Always right. That's right.
So you need to be learning to play their game. But this gap, developers want you to present, recruiters want developers to present in a particular way, and developers want recruiters to read between the lines and actually see the value, even though it's not presented there on their resume or on their LinkedIn profile. So in this world where developers just want to speak to the companies, but they don't want to pick up the phone and call them, they don't want to email them, they want an intermediary, which is the recruiter. So the recruiter exists because the companies can't find the developers and the developers don't want to stand out and talk to them. So they exist because we're lazy. I'm a developer. I hate recruiters too. And I can say it because I became one. But they exist because of our gaps in what we're willing to do, and what we're able to do in terms of selling ourselves.
Yeah.
Recruitment is actually a sales job or a marketing job. They take you, market, and sell you to somebody else. That's what that game is.
This is my theory on why salespeople tend to do really well after coding boot camps. I noticed that they, despite not always being the most technical, I'm not saying that's always the case, but in my experience I've seen, they tend to get hired pretty quickly. I actually worked for a guy that owned a coding boot camp, was a sales guy, then recruited me because he was getting so many jobs on Upwork that he basically just subcontracted it to me because I was actually pretty technical, but I had zero clue about how to go about acquiring people online. He was really good at that. And I was like, man, this guy knows how to get money.
Yeah, and that was another one of my big posts was to tell people to think like a startup. And if you sat there in your bedroom and you code this app, anyone who builds an app knows that they're going to have to market it and sell it. You can't just write it and everyone turns up, or very rarely does that actually work.
Yeah,
it's more of a marketing job and a sales job that actually turns it into this success. So what I was saying is, you've built this product, through a boot camp. You've got amassed these skills, but now you're going to have to sell them to get that product out there. And then the abuse I got back was just like, I haven't got time to start a startup. I'm like, no. That's not what I mean. I mean, you need to do the sales and marketing piece on top. You wouldn't start a business in this way, and you need to think of yourself as a business. And your business currently doesn't have a sales and marketing team, so you've got to then you've got the product, you bought that, and then learned a lot and instilled that into yourself. Now sell.
I think a lot of people say, I've already paid for the boot camp. I learned all this really hard stuff. They're just like, what? The next part is the job, right? Like, why do I have to do this other huge amount of things, in order to get it? There was a guy yesterday on Instagram, he basically was saying, you should do free work if you're a developer. And the way he worded it, I could see it could ruffle some feathers, and it did. It got so many negative comments, and he actually took down the post. He's a pretty big influencer, I guess, on Instagram, and he apologized for it. I hate to say I agree. I'm like, if you don't have experience, you're going to need to get experience. And the best way to do that is often by providing some free work.
I had a post where someone had asked about doing an internship. And I thought long and hard about my answer. Now, internships don't really compute for me here in the UK. They're not a thing. It's very unpopular. It's probably increasing in its popularity as we're, following the footsteps of the US always. But internships don't compute. So as a person trying to solve a business problem, I'm like, if you have the resources, like you don't need money immediately, and you can utilize an internship to go and get the skills, to get the job, to turn this into a paid thing, and off you go. That's what I would do. When I offer my service to boot camps, I offer a free trial, and I work for a month for free. I always do. It's kind of a standard thing. But that's not me saying, hey, you're starving, go and work for free.
Yeah, right.
And it's certainly not something I would do, as someone. I've got a wife and kids and a mortgage and stuff. Right. But you need to work out how you can get the job. And if that's one of your pieces of leverage, I would use it. And I talk to people on the course about leveraging what you've got. For me, working for US companies, I knew that, I can get paid a really good wage for the UK, but undercut people in the US and do very well. And I did. But then a lot of people who I was hiring from various places around the world, they would always say to me, oh no, I want the San Francisco wage. And I'm like, well, they're just going to employ someone in San Francisco.
San Francisco, right?
Yeah. So now, do I think that everyone should be paid the same for doing the same job? Yeah. But I can't tell people, no, you fight the good fight until the end, because I know you're just not going to get the job. So my advice sometimes will contradict what I believe should be happening. But what I'm hell-bent on, I guess, is getting you the job so that getting you that first job so that you can do your time, get your experience, and get a pay rise or get a different job.
Right.
But solving the problem, you shouldn't turn your nose up at an internship or unpaid work or whatever it is that gets you to where you need to be.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you're right, everybody has a different situation. And for some people, that's a deal breaker. And for a lot of people, it's not. I still have done free work. I've been doing this for 10 years. When I wanted to learn sales, I did 100 sales calls for free for my buddy and didn't get paid a dime. And I learned a little bit about how to do cold calling, which was a good skill for me to pick up at the time. I'm sure when I want to learn the new thing, I'll do something similar. I want to do a little game with you real quick. Let's say I'm your average boot camp grad. I went to a MERN stack, Mongo Express, React, Node, learned a little bit of full stack JavaScript stuff. I was a former, security guard or something like that. what do I do on my LinkedIn? What should I be doing now that I'm graduated or before I'm graduated? What is like my general approach that you would recommend for me to get that first job?
So before you graduate, while you're crying over your keyboard, trying to get your code to work, while you're learning, while you're overcoming challenges, you need to let the world see that. It's kind of like the build in public strategy. So I would be documenting your journey about what you're doing, because you're going to get to the end and you're going to show people this shiny certificate, which doesn't mean anything to anybody. And people mistrust in some instances. And there's a lot more value in what you actually did during those weeks or months on that boot camp versus what the certificate is going to communicate. So I'd be unpacking that to show your proactivity, because everybody else is going to come out with the same certificate. Now, how do you differentiate yourself? Secondly, I would have a profile that communicates your value really efficiently. So I would encourage you to go and look at your banner image. For most of you, it's a picture of your pet or your recent holiday. How does that advance the story of you being a MERN stack developer? And it doesn't matter what the picture is, but we could drop logos on and make it apparent. This is what I do. I always say it's like the cover of your book, and your book being, LinkedIn profile, the book of you. And we do judge books by covers, unfortunately.
That's true. Yeah.
So I would make it clear from that. I would make it clear from the headline what you do. Lots of people I want to keep my options open. I'll just put software developer or full stack developer or programmer. No one's looking for software developer. There's billions of those. Now a recruiter's going to be drilling down going, I'm looking at this job specification. I'm trying to tick off all the technical items within it. They're looking for something specific. So it's rarely the case that those profiles that are more generic that stand out. And then you've got to do on your about section, you've got to unpack those skills. So it's not just MERN, it's not just React, it's Redux or TypeScript or testing tools like Jest or React Testing Library. What about cloud utilities? All the complementary skills that go around it, and you flood your about section with those. Certainly in the first 3 to 4 lines, I'm always saying sweat the first few lines so that I don't have to work and read down to get it. I get it as I come through. And then I get your activity, and I see you living and breathing it. I see some of the featured posts, so I get a visual element to it. If you've got any previous experience, then great. If not, after that, where are you funneling me to evidence? You've got some evidence in your activity section, but you're funneling me then to GitHub or to your portfolio website, some project that you're working on, but you've got to funnel me somewhere. So I can't just turn up as a recruiter and say, I think Brian's great. Why do you think Brian's great?
Yeah, right.
I don't know. I've got to go, well, you asked for this, I can see it here. You asked for that, I can see it there. I'm pointing to all the pieces of evidence. Then when you've given me all the ammunition to sell you, I will go and sell you. So I would be making sure your profile communicates that value quickly, funnels me somewhere, and gives me an easy way to set up an interview with you. So then I'm talking about how and where they're applying, and making it easy for someone wherever they arrive. If they arrive at LinkedIn, can I get to all your evidence? If I arrive at GitHub, can I get to everywhere? If I arrive at your portfolio, are you sending me round to all of this information and then funneling me into completing the transaction? Because you are a product at the end of the day, and the transaction is offering you an interview. Because when you're applying to all these places and you're one of 1,000 applicants, how many people am I going to interview? Maybe 10? So that means 990 of you are going to be rejected by a recruiter who's not technical, and they didn't read your profile. They scanned through it and decided whether or not there was enough evidence to proceed and spend half an hour on a call. But they won't do it unless there's enough evidence to proceed.
Yeah, man, that is a good point. I mean, it sounds like a lot of this is like SEO for recruiters, if I'm kind of reading you correctly. Yeah.
And you have to write it in layers. So have you ever been in an interview where it feels like the person's reading your profile or your resume for the first time?
Oh, yeah.
And usually it's because it is the first time they've read it. Someone's looked at it and gone, looks good. And then somebody else goes, okay, but what have they done? Okay, we'll go through GitHub. Oh, they seem to have some good stuff. I don't know what's there, but it all seems to point in the right direction. We'll talk to that person. And then when they get into the interview, they go, okay, can't be bothered to read this. Just tell me about yourself.
Yeah, tell me about exactly.
And that's what happens. Yeah.
It's happened. I was on the market, and that's been, out of like the 10 calls I had with recruiters, that was how most of them kind of went. And they found me somehow, do some magic, and they got on like, okay, now tell me about, basically sell yourself again in some detail this time.
Yeah. And quite often, developers would be giving me their profiles, which were terrible, and I would rewrite them.
Oh.
And I would and then I'd give it to the salesperson to sell to this client. And when I'm in that meeting, because sometimes they want teams of people, and I'm listening to the feedback and that sort of thing. So when I'm listening to that salesperson sell that person, they're literally reading out the notes I've given them, saying, this is why I think this person's good, because I'm giving them the ammunition. Now, the developer never gave me that ammunition, but that's kind of what I try and teach, is to go, I need you to give that recruiter, give whoever it is you're going to be talking to, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's an employer, give them enough confidence to move forward with you. But they won't read between the lines. You or I might read between the lines on a developer profile going, there's not a lot of information there, but I can see they've done this. That looks kind of good. Mm-hmm. But we're dealing with recruiters or HR people who might not be as aware or good at reading between the lines. So you've got to give them something to go on. And unfortunately, most developers don't do that. Yeah,
I think a lot of people want others to take a chance on them. And I've said this too, like, no one really wants to take a chance on you. No one, as much as like even me, like I'm putting my reputation on the line as a manager. If I say, you know what, you failed the exam, you didn't do so well in the interview, and you show me no indication you can do the job, but you know what, I want to give you a chance. Like, that would make zero sense. But I feel like that's almost what people want. They're like, I want you to take a chance. I'm going to put my number one job is like French fry chef. No mention of really doing software development work, but I'm applying for a software developer job. I'm like, well, how is this going to work out? It's not.
Yeah. So many times in so many interviews, people say, if you just take a chance on me, you'll realize I'm great. And as a developer who's jumped in, this might be a change of tech, it might be, the stepping up in level, and I know that they're probably good for it. But the thing is, so say you come to me, Brian, let's pretend your profile is terrible, right?
Sure.
And you say, just take a chance on me, Dave, please. And I go,
me. Yeah, right?
Yeah, okay. And I put you forward, and you go into that interview and you tank, right? You just fail miserably. And the salesman comes back and says, we spent months working on this great new client. Yeah, what happened? Because we lost the deal. I say, well, I took a chance on Brian. And they say, they're looking at Brian's profile going, why did you put Brian forward? I'm like, yeah, I know it looks bad, but Brian said, if you just take a chance on me, you won't regret it. And they go, oh, David, that's a lovely thing you've done there. You're fired, but it's lovely. And I'm like, I don't like to get fired. I like to get pay rises, and I like to get thank yous. So I'm not putting you forward. And I wouldn't mind if it wasn't every other developer asking me to take a chance. And I'm like, why don't you take a chance and fill in your profile? Like, let's do this together.
That makes for great LinkedIn content. Like, I found a guy on the side of the road who said he'd code in HTML for free, and now he's the CTO of our company. I'm like, yeah, it sounds great there. In real life, we generally don't want to take chances on people we don't know, or even people we do know. We don't really want to take a chance. I think that's helpful. A helpful framework for thinking about your LinkedIn profile and your resume too. It's like, think about the non-technical audience and how easy you can make it to prove that you can do the thing. That's a really smart approach. Something I think learning more and more every single time I get back on the job market. Like, who's my real audience for this? It's not generally actually an engineering manager, which I think I write a lot about stuff, and I think people think that I'm maybe the first person reading your resume. By the time your resume got to my desk as an engineering manager, I have no clue. It came from an HR person, and that person has zero technical background, and I don't honestly know what he or she was doing. I'm sure he or she was working with people like you, recruiters that were out there hunting through the, hundreds of applications.
Yeah, and I was bizarre in that I had 20 years of development experience. So this is where quite often the job specification would be given to me and it makes no sense whatsoever. And I would have the ability to push back and go, look, this doesn't add up, or you're missing, you're eliminating a huge portion of the market here. But most recruiters are not going to be able to push back on those things. Mm-hmm. I would encourage you, don't think about answering no to that. It's not a no. What have you got that's complementary, or if you haven't got anything about that, have you got any evidence of you making inroads to learning it or doing it? And that's where you can go and look at these big job boards and work out what are the most frequently requested skills and go, well, there's these top 3 and I've got 2 of them, but I'm probably not making enough of them on my profile, so they should be appearing somewhere to open up those doors if somebody does take a look. And then this last one, that seems to open up a lot of doors, and I don't have that. That's the one that you're learning, but we don't say learning, current interests. And then you work on that, and you evidence the journey of learning that, and now you're opening up more doors. But often you'll find when you look through the frequently requested skills that you might have them, but there's no evidence on your profile. And it's quite interesting. It's quite telling when you get someone to open up their resume or open up their GitHub, open up their LinkedIn profile, and I say, what is the one thing you want me to see? What is the value that you think, if I see it, I will know you're good? And it's usually, well, scroll down, click here, go there, do this, go, and I'm like, I'm not getting there. Like, do you really think a recruiter with no time or a HR person that's got to go through hundreds, if not thousands of profiles is ever going to get there? So it's all about the UX, really, of your profile and every piece of evidence that you're delivering to them.
Jeez, that is really solid and practical advice. It's funny because it seems so intuitive, but I know for a fact I'm not doing enough of that. And I know from the many, many resumes I've read over the years and generally the profiles to look at that most people are not doing that. I am curious what you think about this before I get into some things about working with Parsity and the job guarantee and some of the ideas and your thoughts around that. But have you seen like a silver bullet as far as technology goes? Or do you see a piece of technology that you think, you know what, if I was going to learn one thing, it would probably be this to stand out?
Well, I mean, that's difficult. There were things I saw as a recruiter, and coming from the development background, there's things I'd see on people's resumes, certain languages. If someone was really into functional programming, someone's really into Rust and things like that, it's not your average junior developer that's getting into these sorts of things.
For sure.
So when I'd see it, I'd know someone's interested. But it was interesting doing the hiring because a lot of people ask me about what's the main thing to learn. And whenever I dig into why do you want to know, it usually comes down to money.
Oh,
and then
for sure.
I'd say, DevOps people earn quite a lot of money. But weirdly, one of the most highly paid was WordPress. But there's WordPress on various levels. Most people get into WordPress, do a little bit of it. It inspires them to get into a bit of PHP, and then it sends them on their career and they do other things. But some people stay in WordPress and make a lot of money. Now, if you hate WordPress, that's a hard job because you hate it. Turning up to that every day. So the thing I've found is you can make good money doing anything. And that's where even myself, like using certain languages, certain libraries and frameworks. Like when I did React for the first time, I hated it. I literally hated it.
Me too.
Came from Angular JS.
Me too. Yeah.
And then when that stopped, we went into React. And then when I started using Vue, I loved it. It just resonated with me. And then I could do what I wanted to do with it. But if you're being told by your friends, it's got to be this, it's got to be that, I don't think that's really the case. I think there's some things where you go, if you want to have a career in this niche, in this industry, there are certain technologies that you should be using that are aligned with that. But I don't think there's one particular thing where you go, that's the door opener. I think the door opener in most cases, and this also applies as you become more senior as well, the door opener is that proactive. Too many people in their about section say, I'm passionate, I'm enthusiastic.
I'm a passionate
and I always
developer.
go, I don't believe you. Show me. So whenever I see that, I scroll down from their about section that says I'm passionate and enthusiastic. I scroll down to the activity section, which is empty. And I said, have you ever seen anyone passionate about a subject that doesn't talk about it? Me neither.
That's a good point.
Yeah,
That's a good. I like that. Yeah, that's funny because the overuse of the term passionate developer is kind of like a comical thing to me. That's like I see it.
It's not a
everywhere.
word you should use. It's something you should demonstrate.
I like. Yeah, that's true. Because a lot of people really are. They like you really do seem to really like coding. Or if you're not, just don't put it because it's also just overused at this point. I feel like it's just so many people put it on there as this thing. I want to talk about this thing. You have a job guarantee you have a few services you offer through Crushing Digital, one of which is a job guarantee through your VIP service. I've actually recommended people that I was mentoring go to you. They've had success. They've enjoyed the program a lot. They seem to be getting a ton out of it. I also came to you and said, hey, I'd like to partner with you with Parsity because I thought we have career services. We do we provide the curriculum, the mentorship, and the skill acquisition, but getting a job is a whole other beast. And for a while, we kind of struggled with this. I thought, went back and forth, like, how can we ethically guarantee, in quotes, a job? And, I like the way that you approach it. You say, basically, hey, it's not, you can't guarantee the results if you don't put in the necessary steps, which I think is a fair thing to do. But I'm curious, like, as a business owner, how do you make sure you're not setting yourself up for failure? And also, how do you make sure that the students aren't setting themselves up for failure by entering into an agreement like that?
There's a few things. So I didn't just offer that straight off the bat. People came to me and said, their boot camps offered job guarantees. Would I take on that guarantee? And I very quickly said no. But then as I worked with a lot of boot camps, a theme started to emerge. And it does tend to be the same everywhere. People generally fall into three buckets. There's those people that engage. This could be the boot camp and it could be my course at the same time. They engage, do the work, and usually the fruits of that come out at the end. Some people engage a bit, they either get stuck or they get lost or distracted, whatever it is. Some people do a bit and stop and fall off. Now sometimes so I used to run this course over 4 weeks, and then I realized those people that would drop off would come back, or some of them would come back weeks later and go, I've applied to 400 jobs on LinkedIn, I've heard nothing, please can you help me? And it's almost like they have to be broken before they're ready to really engage and do it. And then there's this third bucket, which they never turn up. They never do. I don't know whether it's their parents are paying or something. I don't know. But some people just seem to buy things and don't. I guess we all buy Udemy courses and don't do them. I guess it's no different.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Guilty.
Over time then, working with hundreds and hundreds of students, I realized if I can actually make you do it, that the chances are very good. But the profiles have to look how I want them to look. Obviously, you've got to allow people to have their own identity, the level of creativity and those sorts of things. And I'm not like, too restricted on that. But there's certain things where I go, I don't see the value. I want you to put things in a certain way and communicate your value. And everyone's different, right?
Right.
So the thing I got to at the end was like, well, if I can make them do it, can I get them jobs? So I started trialing this with a number of people, and it went very, very well. And I was working more closely with them on a one-to-one basis, or very small cohorts, and it proved so successful. In fact, I didn't fail, that I thought, okay, maybe I can offer that. So what's the time frame? Now, of those people in that trial, it was within 1 to 2 months. So I've set it at 4 at the minute. And, There's people on my course at the minute. Everyone, some people are in very remote areas, and I'm learning that that's its own challenge. There's people in very different circumstances, so I'm learning what works and what doesn't, and what are the red flags and what are not. Not that it's a red flag that I would say you live here, therefore no, but it's all about, can I get people to engage? So then I made this VIP service, which was a lot more expensive, but that was my effort to go, how can I make you do it? Mm-hmm. So then I said, well, if you don't turn up to the sessions, they meet with me twice a week, at least twice a week, and if you don't turn up, I'm going to keep the money. Now, I don't want to keep the money. I want to get them a job. Well, in which case I do get to keep the money. But, so that's where I've got to, and that's what I'm doing now. And it's proving successful. And then there are a few bits where I'm learning, going, okay, I didn't realize that's how that worked in that geographic area and those sorts of problems. But I still come to that conclusion where I know if I can force you to do it, usually it comes good.
And I think that's kind of how I'm looking at it as well, like from an ethical standpoint and also just practical. Because I'm like, if you do certain things, I can basically guarantee your success. Now, we're offloading that onto you through Parsity, but I think of something like almost a weight loss program. Like, there's a reason why most people go to like an online like weight loss or exercise program and they don't get the results they want. But if I could force you and I could buy your food and make sure you're in a calorie deficit and you only ate these things, I can guarantee you success, because now I'm controlling the inputs that are going to lead to the outputs which we want, which is exactly what you're doing. You're doing a lot of this really the heavy lifting and saying you do X, Y, and Z, and based on previous history, experience, those are usually going to lead to these great outcomes.
Yeah, and a phrase I often use is, I can't guarantee you a job, even though I do. What I say is, I can get you into a lot more interviews, and if, like I said before, if you're applying on big job boards, you're one of 1,000 applicants. So you're one of 1,000. But if I can get you into the interview, you're one of 10. And if I can get you to start applying differently, I can even reduce that number. So going from 1 in 1,000 down to 1 in 10, your odds are starting to go through the roof. So if we can make a profile that helps you stand out even when the pool is large, that's step one. And then step two is to get you to try and avoid the pool and try and make your own path. Have a strategic approach to both your networking and your job search strategy. Then things start to happen. Yeah,
that makes total sense, and that's also an ethical way to do it too. Like, look, if you suck at interviews and you bomb every single interview, and you show up and turn your camera off and cuss the person out, of course we can't guarantee you're gonna get nailed the job, right? But getting in front of people, and it's funny, I think people overestimate a lot of times their competition in these interviews. I've just done so many interviews, and I'm thinking there's a lot of smart people out there, but there's also a lot of, like, at the end of the day, there's a lot of just average developers too. There's not like all these ex-Google employees that are going for these startup jobs that are paying, sub 100K that you're applying for. You're competing with people that are, on the slightly above or somewhere in between the average range, and you can totally nail
it goes back to that statement again. The best developers rarely get the job. So this is where I encourage you to put the human aspect back into this soulless process of job searching that we're doing. And if you can do that, if you can present a proactive developer. So I often talk about this in terms of, you're a dance teacher and you can select one student for extra classes, extra attention. And most of the kids are sat picking their nose in this corner. And then one kid is desperately trying to pirouette in the corner, but getting it wrong and falling over and doing badly. Who do you pick?
Right.
You pick the one that's doing it. And that's what we've got to show on our profile, is that you're more proactive, that you want this more. You're passionate, but without saying you're passionate. That's right. And if we can present that, people do start to take notice. And when a developer comes to me and says they've applied to hundreds of jobs and they've heard nothing, I always ask them, where and how have you been applying? And I've never had a different answer to this question. It's just the big job boards or recruiters. And we're all looking in the same place, 100%.
Absolutely.
In which case, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting a different result is, the definition as we talk.
That's
talk
right.
about it. So yeah. I just want to get people to go and do something different. It's not like I say they can't apply on big job boards and things like that. I know they're going to do that, but I want to get them to put different irons in the fire. I want them to get them to present a developer that's great on paper, and then a developer that is great in terms of how they present themselves when they're applying in a more proactive way. And I get people doing videos to introduce themselves. And when you were talking about the interview side of things, that's something we do. We meet twice a week and we're talking about the careers side of things. Mm-hmm. But then I also run once a week. We have interview practice. And
nice.
So we get everyone to come along because everyone wants to do interview practice on their own. And the best thing you can do for interview practice is to try and mimic the pressure. Now, you'll get to know me on the course, in which case, hopefully we're friendly with each other and now you're relaxed. That's not an interview. So I interview you in front of 20 other people or 10 other people or however many's on the group. And now the pressure starts to rise because no one wants to look stupid. And it's usually, it's not about whether you know the answer or not. It's how you handle the pressure. So getting everyone to make those mistakes in how they answer questions, even down to the trivial ones. Tell me about yourself. It doesn't have to be just the technical questions, but even the softer side of it, getting used to making the mistakes, having the right story to tell, knowing what to say at the right time. And we cover all that over the weeks we go through the course. So by the end of it, you've made every mistake possible. And everyone's laughed at you, and everyone's, you've all become friends as you've taken the nick out of each other on the way through, and now you should be ready.
Dude, that is one of the most underrated ones. That is really smart because that's huge. Like, people totally underestimate the amount of nerves that go into an interview. I've blown interviews like that. I had like a panic attack, and this was kind of recently. I'm a little embarrassed to say this is like 3 years ago. I had like a straight up panic attack during an interview. I did a bunch of mock interviews. And I did them not because I'm going to get way better algorithms and data structures. I'm like, I feel like I know that well enough. I had to get over my nerves and make the experience more normal. And that was the single biggest factor in helping me nail way more interviews. Doing it in front of 20 people, that's another level though. But that's smart. I think you need that. You need to make it normalized, like this idea of being judged in front of people, which is so foreign. Because when else in your life are you like on the line for 100,000 or however many monies and salaries are on the line? You're playing this carnival game where you're in front of somebody getting judged on your ability to answer these questions you would normally never come across in your life, And
that's the thing. I read about all these things and, everyone's saying, remember like 25 stories and who is going to remember these things when the pressure is on? So I have this different strategy where it's kind of like we have a couple of stories, 2 or 3 stories, and we let pieces out so that you know what you're doing all the way through. I know I know that story so well inside and out that I can just drip feed bits of it out and paint a picture. So it looks like you're having a conversation on the surface, but underneath you're steering the conversation to know that I can let these things out. If you do it in the right way, it's quite a powerful thing because you've practiced that over and over and over. So we'll get into the interview and I'll ask the same question in a very slightly different way so that you can start to know in your brain, that's that story, and you start to change what you're saying. So you get to be more comfortable. The answer to getting better at interviews is not learning more, it's learning to calm the nerves more. And then letting a little bit of yourself out.
I've even gotten stories written down now because most of my interviews have been remote since the pandemic, really. I used to do a lot of in-person interviews. I'd follow the same thing, but I just go to the office beforehand and kind of read over my notes, think, okay, that's the story I'm going to tell when they ask this question. But I have like 3 stories in my bank now. Yeah. Like I'm like, that's the leadership thing, that's the conflict one, that's the interesting project one. And I just kind of pick and choose. Like how I'll have like an introduce myself one or tell me about yourself question, a good project and a bad project. And sometimes I'll even
switch the tech from one project to the other, because I want to tell the good project, but I want it to be about that tech. So I'll flick the two, and just, it doesn't really matter what the story is. It's the same thing at the end of the day. But yeah,
it's funny. I'm glad to know that I'm doing some of these things right, because I've learned this over the years of bombing so many things. David, it's been really great speaking with you today. I'm excited about partnering with you and Parsity students. But you don't have to go to Parsity to partner with David. David works with all sorts of people. Where can people find you online?
So the website is crushing.digital, and there are 2 courses there. So you can either do the VIP, which is what we've been talking about today, but all the same content for the course, like all the videos. There's 50-something videos on the course, and 2 workshops a week, and a template library, including resumes and all the things for LinkedIn, all that kind of stuff. That's all there for $99 on the website as well, as the standard course. But yeah, crushing.digital, and it's pretty much at Crushing Digital on most social media as well.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Yeah, I follow you on TikTok, which I'm not on much anymore. But I also follow you mostly on LinkedIn. Love your posts. If you're not following David there, you really should. And yeah, man, really can't wait to start working with you, and happy to have you on today. His contact information is in the show notes. And if you're subscribed to our email newsletter, you should also get it in there. Thanks again, David.
Thank you, Brian. I've really enjoyed it, and I can't wait to start working with you.
That'll do it for today's episode of the Develop Yourself podcast. To learn more about becoming a software engineer with us, then check out Parsity.io. If you're not quite ready for that, then jump into our Dev30.xyz program, which is 30 days of working on your mindset, habits, and JavaScript skills. Totally worth it. See you next week.